As of yesterday, I have been covering Takagi-san on this channel for 4 years. 4 years of digging deep to figure out what makes this show so great. I hope that you will keep these years of experience in mind when I say the following. The first 50% of the Takagi-san 3 finale is great. The following 48% is the absolute best the show has ever been. And the final 2% was infuriating to a degree that I walked away from my first viewing more annoyed than I have ever been with this show. Now that I've seen the episode 3 times in preparation for this first impressions video, I think I'm ready to deconstruct those feelings. But to really get to the root of it, we need to start at the beginning. As I said earlier, the first half of this episode is great, probably on par with the best the series has to offer. I was wrong about Confession and Returning the Favor being combined into a single story, but doing them separately was best for the episode's pacing. Confession plays out much like it does in the manga. Nishikata doesn't confess, but he does take the time to deconstruct how he feels about Takagi, and stumbles upon some interesting discoveries. Now, Nishikata has wondered if he's in love with Takagi as early as season 1, but there's a difference between, wait, do I like her? And, I think she's cute. Wait, does that mean I like her? Yes, he does try to convince himself that he doesn't, just as he has every time before. But these moments have always been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which while frustrating in the short term, is still technically a step forward. I find it interesting that Nishikata decides to create a challenge for Takagi at this moment instead of confessing. The fact that he would choose one over the other as being true to himself, and the fact that he's striving to make his most intricate contest yet, says a lot about how he sees these games and how he views their relationship. And the fact that this plan ends in a White Day gift regardless of whether she wins or not is very telling of his true motivation. From the 25% mark, we get into a modified adaptation of Chapter 99, Returning the Favor, with Nishikata trying to find a spot to leave his Nishikata quest box, but not being able to find any. Ultimately, the anime uses this narrative device for a different purpose. The manga uses it to force Nishikata into giving Takagi her White Day gift in person, while the anime uses it to get the first box into the hands of Mina. But we get ahead of ourselves. We've known since Two Choice Question in Season 1 that Nishikata doesn't want to be separated from Takagi. Both the Season 1 and 2 finales played with this idea in different ways. The Season 3 finale doesn't give it much focus beyond the glimpse of what a life without Takagi might be like, as Nishikata has to spend the day at school without her, and can't help but look towards her empty seat, feeling strange that she isn't there. Then we get the news that she's been held up for the day due to strong winds. I ordinarily wouldn't mention such a mundane detail, but the fact that it is specifically strong winds keeping her away actually gets called back to in the ultimate scene. It is when Mina finds the first Nishikata quest box and brings it to the roof with her friends that the best of the episode begins. Yes, I'm serious. The B-plot trio story in this episode is by far the best in the entire show. Not only does it tone down their more obnoxious qualities as showcased in Audition, not only does it have all of them work together, bringing their own unique skills and progressing the group to victory, but the ending of their story actually shows some growth. When the trio figure out that Nishikata was the one behind the game, Sane expresses that she'd had an idea it was him. When Yukari states that this was a scheme for him to give a White Day present, the other trio members don't question it like they have been known to do. And finally, when Yukari realizes that this scavenger hunt was meant for Takagi, the entire trio realizes that they need to put it all back, and do so with urgency. But the best moment of this story is when they are walking home and Mina expresses that while she doesn't understand love, she can understand that being with Nishikata must be an absolute joy for Takagi. The English subtitles on HiDive have Mina describe their relationship as exciting, which is a fair translation. However, I absolutely heard the Japanese term doki doki, which is a very particular kind of excitement. Doki doki is a Japanese onomatopoeia term, describing the sound one's heart makes when it beats quickly. And the scene ends with all of them agreeing that the relationship between Nishikata and Takagi must be a lot of fun. I absolutely love this. I rank this B-plot trio story over After School and Tailing. Great stuff. The other B-plot in this episode, namely Hamaguchi's half of the Confession adaptation, exceeded my expectations with a single facial expression. We always knew from the manga that Hamaguchi was going to fail. In both mediums, Hojo is annoyed, turns around, calls Hamaguchi an idiot, and leaves. The anime has one exception to this. We get to see Hojo after she turns around, and we ever so briefly see this little smile. Hojo knows exactly what Hamaguchi wanted to do, and even though she's annoyed that he failed, she understands this failure and appreciates that an attempt was made. I've talked at length about how the showrunners have improved on the source material by making changes, but I don't think I've ever seen a difference so minor making such an improvement on a story. Once again, great stuff. The scene ends with Hamaguchi hoping that Nishikata does better. You've probably noticed that I've jumped around a bit here. I've talked about Hamaguchi and Hojo walking home together before Nishikata has even gotten his lunch break. But I wanted to get the B-plot stuff out of the way so that I can focus on Nishikata's story. Because frankly, as good as the B-plot is in this episode, the A-plot blows it out of the water. Not gonna lie, when I predicted that Kimura was going to play a role in the finale, I mostly meant it as a joke. But here he is, not only appearing during Nishikata's library duty, referencing the dream at the start of the season and mildly contributing to the theme of confession, but he unintentionally sets off the penultimate sequence of the episode. Bringing this book back was absolutely brilliant. I would not have guessed in 1,000 years that such a throwaway prop would set off the story's climax. But here we are. This book, now in Nishikata's possession, gives him evidence that Takagi was not reading aloud when she said "I love you." And in a miraculous showcase of his emotional understanding and maturity, he actually recalls other times that Takagi has alluded to having romantic feelings, and questions whether any of them might have been genuine. This idea spurs him into action, and we get our big climactic running scene. Now that we know what that clip of Takagi getting into a car was all about, I'm glad that the conflict wasn't her moving away or anything. I realized upon reading the comments of my last video that I had just projected the ending of Tsukigakure onto Takagi-san, and now that I've seen how the season ends, I don't think that it would have been necessary. So after Nishikata has a genuinely hilarious Butterfingers moment and his White Day gift gets run over by a car. I know this is supposed to be dramatic, but I can't help but laugh at this. We call back to Sunset as he runs for dear life, refusing to stop despite his clear exhaustion. I love the reason they got to meet up at all was up to both of them. Nishikata would never have caught up to that car, but thanks to Takagi giving him that scarf for Christmas and Nishikata's insistence on wearing it, she catches just a glimpse of him and gets out of the car. Upon seeing the cherry blossoms, I lost my crap. I was so ready for the climax of the season. Nishikata has some pretty solid proof that he's in love with Takagi. He also has some solid proof that she likes him as well. Their romance is so obvious that even Mina and Sane accept it. Kimura doesn't buy Nishikata's denial and Hamaguchi is rooting for them. And the piece de resistance, the final element of the scene, the strong wind that had kept them apart today, blows through the cherry blossom trees and almost perfectly recreates Takagi's dream from New Semester. No high score or future to obfuscate the theme of confession. The final piece gets into place as they finally get to the climax of the entire season, and Nishikata completely chickens out and says something vague and non-committal. Okay, I know that sounds really harsh and unfair, but come on! He begins this interaction just barely being able to say, "wanted to see you." Then clarifies once he's caught his breath, "because I wanted to see you." And then he winds up a sentence that by all accounts should be something big, and it's, "I really wanted to come and see you." There's a lot great about this scene. Takagi reacts as though she has been confessed to, showing us the most extreme critical hit face we've ever seen. I like the metaphor of the White Day chocolate. When Nishikata laments that it got ran over by a goddamn car. Takagi insists that it wasn't the chocolate she wanted. She wanted to know his feelings and now she does. Apparently. She ends the episode holding his hands in a romantic way. It's beautiful. The problem is that the moment that got us here is non-committal. Nishikata doesn't actually confess explicitly or even allude to the fact that he wants to like Hamaguchi did. If there was a season 4, it could start us off right back in status quo land where barely anything has changed. Was it silly of me to get excited about a confession after weeks of telling you all not to? No. It's one thing to say earlier episodes alluded to a confession that we didn't get, and the entire finale built up to a confession that we didn't get. It really comes down to one question. Are these two a couple now? If the answer is yes, then the scene was far too vague to be satisfying. And if the answer is no, then we've moved nowhere. Takagi already knew that Nishikata liked her. If the point is that he didn't try to turn this into a competition as he did at the start of the episode, we've seen him forego competition before. After the status quo shifting finales of seasons 1 and 2, a finale that's just confirming what we already knew, but more, just isn't enough. It comes down to what I said towards the end of season 2. There wasn't anywhere to go other than confession, but the showrunners decided to stall for more time. Maybe this is because of the movie, but if that's the case, there had better be a damn good reason that the movie couldn't have started with the pair already a couple. And if the film does start with them being a couple, again, this scene should have been more clear. Please believe me when I say that it brings me no joy to diss the climax like this. I promise I'm not being contrarian or negative for the sake of it. I genuinely wanted to love the ending as much as I do the rest of the episode, but I just expected more from a finale that took the route this one did. And let me reiterate that this episode was excellent. In terms of the plot leading up to the climax, it trumps all the other finales with ease. It gives us the best of the B-plot trio, the best of Hamaguchi and Hojo, and arguably the best of Nishikata. I've decided to wait for the film to release to analyse the series properly, partly because I want to see if it adds any more closure, partly because I need time to get over what a letdown this finale was. I might do some fun little Takagi-san projects in the meantime, and I really need to finish that Tsukigakure analysis, but we'll see what happens from here. That's all for this first impression series. I'd like to thank my patrons: Orion Tran, Lars Espen, Data52, Jamman5, Lemon Shark, Pixcalibur, Alberto Cruz, Tyler Bennett, Tenka, Jeremy Pashik, Fireclaw, Soren, Christopher Wang, Will, Mario, Luke Stewart, Ignacio, and Aidan Nielsen. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.